Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Svetlana Dar. I'm one of the co-PIs on the Mission Earth project, and I'm sitting here in the place of Kevin Tchaikovsky, who is unavailable right now to do the introduction to this webinar. This is webinar number 13 in a series that we've been doing as part of the Mission Earth NASA CAN project. And it's entitled Building Career Awareness Through Your GLOBE Program. I'm going to go quickly through a few slides related to Mission Earth and a few things that are going on in the GLOBE community. So Mission Earth is funded by NASA. It gets teachers and students to collect data and provides teacher professional development. There's one in Ohio happening this summer. Excuse me, I jumped ahead. This is the problem. This is a way of doing it. Okay. And it engages the public in using GLOBE and NASA resources. So lots of partners, Boston University, WestEd, which is the organization I'm with. We'll say a little bit more about each of the presenters in a moment. UC Berkeley, Tennessee State University, and NASA are all partners in this effort. Okay. So the presenters today are Kristen Delmadeo from Langley Research Center at NASA. She's the communications lead for the SAGE mission. I'm Svetlana Darsh. I'm a researcher at WestEd. We're an educational research organization primarily housed in California, but with offices throughout the country. We're a GLOBE partner organization with UC Berkeley. Tracy Ostrom represents UC Berkeley at the College and Career Academy Support Network. And Jessica Taylor is also going to present. She's from NASA Langley as well. She's also a co-PI on the project and brings lots of NASA resources to our work. Okay, so a couple of announcements. The Virtual Science Symposium has launched. Projects were due on April 3rd, but if there are teachers who are still interested, they may be able to contact the GLOBE implementation office and see if that would be possible. I don't think it will be, but just wanted to let people know. We have badges in addition to a regular juring of the research component. So take a look at the website if you want more information. And the exciting thing is we have regional science symposia that are beginning in April this month, starting with the Southeast region and ending with the Pacific region in June. So the full calendar of regional symposia is listed here. It will be available in the archive, and it's also available on the GLOBE website. Highly encourage all teachers to involve their students, as it's tremendously exciting opportunity. The scientists who jury the projects are extremely helpful and sensitive to the students' work, and it was an extremely positive experience for us last year. Okay, and of course the annual meeting is coming up at the end of July. So getting right into the presentation, I'm going to just start by just covering a couple of points. The whole point is to explore a continuum of career experiences, understand GLOBE as a career preparation experience itself to help students build STEM identity, and also particularly we'll spend most of our time really exploring ways that you can enhance your program with additional career awareness activities. One little slide on STEM jobs. I just wanted to highlight the fact, this is from a report out of the Brookings Institutions on STEM, the hidden STEM economy, that was presented to an NSF convening, and NSF is very interested in the STEM pipeline. Half of all jobs are available to workers without a four-year degree. So one of the things that we're going to be highlighting is the importance of exposing students to the full range of careers that are available in the STEM fields. So why are we talking about career awareness? There are a lot of reasons. We have a lot of students who are disengaged from school, and we want to promote an inclusive environment in which students can engage with science and build STEM identity. They may not ever have thought of themselves as a scientist in the past because their family has nothing to do with science. So we want to provide options to students and a vision for what a career in science or STEM might look like. A lot of kids need motivation, and I'm not just talking about high school students here. A lot of students don't know why they're in school, and usually in the early years, they're excited just to be in school if they have a teacher they like, and they like to do fun projects. But later on, motivation wanes, and kids increasingly want to know why they're doing something. We also, as I mentioned, want to expose students to options they may have never thought about. We have many inner city kids who have never been exposed to this world. And the idea of self-knowledge, which is part of the career development function. It's not just about exposing students to things that are outside of their world, but really helping them understand who they are and what excites them, what they might enjoy doing in the future. So we also want to help them develop skills. We've all heard about 21st century skills. Those go beyond science. Building social capital, which has to do with building relationships with adults. And that's why the Globe International Science Network is so important, providing kids the opportunity to really engage with adults in the field. Navigational skills are about, well, how do I even do this? How do I get to become a scientist? And that's one of the things that our speaker is going to talk about in just a moment. And then, of course, NASA, NSF, and all of the STEM organizations really want to build the STEM workforce. That's not our primary focus, but that's also an important consideration. Okay, I'm gonna cede the floor. So before we actually get into anything didactic and other examples, we wanted to invite a NASA spokesperson to talk about the kinds of careers at NASA. So invite Kristen Damadeo to say a little bit about the kind of careers at Langley and in other parts of NASA.
Great, thank you. Please, if anyone has questions, I have the chat window open and I'm happy to answer whatever questions anyone has. I want to start off by just giving you a little bit about my background. It is not traditional. It's not a traditional STEM background or STEM position. So I actually went to Ramapo College in New Jersey, and my degree is in communication arts. And so I wrote for newspapers for actually the first 5 years of my career. And then eventually got into writing more and more about science and environmental issues. And so when I moved to the Hampton Roads area, a position became available at NASA Langley through SSAI, one of the contract companies. And I started out doing science writing. So kind of acting as a translator slash journalist slash public affairs person who would interview the scientists and researchers and the science directorate about the work that they were doing and then write articles for the website. And but most recently, I worked directly for a project called SAGE, which is the Stratospheric Aerosol and Gas Experiment. And it was an instrument that was designed and built and tested at Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia, and then launched just in February to the International Space Station. And so it's up there right now, taking data. We're processing data at the Flight Mission Support Center at Langley. And there was just a huge team. And I know I had no idea what goes into a project of this scope or how it's done or anything like that, the process that's involved. But I was embedded with the project, working as their communications lead. Not only external communications, including social media and websites, but also education components and reaching out to teachers and students, but also internal communications, so messaging up to stakeholders within the agency and trying to get the team to communicate better. So it was a really, really interesting role to have, and I've moved on to another project now. And so it's a really exciting role to play, to be involved in the team and to be able to kind of have this bird's eye view of the project. So everyone kind of has their, thanks Jess, so I shared the link to our site. So to be able to see the project from that 1,000-foot view where there's the project management team, and so that is a technical role, but it's also someone who has developed really strong leadership skills and has the proven ability to lead a large team. I think at the most, we had 150 people working on the project, just at Langley, right? So it was a big, big team. So it was, there's a huge diverse group of, not only, I'm talking about diversity, not just in gender and race and religion, but also diversity in the backgrounds of everyone that was on the project and the roles that they played. And so, like you mentioned, there's a lot of roles that people might not have realized go into these projects. So there were roles like my role as the communications lead. We also had a lot of people involved who worked in the legal office, because there were a lot of partnerships, both with private companies, with other centers, and international partnerships that went into this project. So lawyers were involved, graphic design artists, photography and video services, because at NASA the project has to be documented every step of the way. So every time there was a piece of hardware built or a test that was done, it had to be documented and stored. So there's configuration managers, which they are the organizers of all of those photos and videos, and they also document all, or store and organize all of the documents, because every time there's something built or tested, someone had to write a procedure and have it approved and then stored. So there's just a whole bunch of roles. A resource analyst, so someone who was in charge of the money. So the project had a budget, and someone had to be in charge of tracking where all the money was going, and scheduling, so making sure that people were available for key events and that there was resources built into those events as well. So it was really integrated and way more than I ever thought went into something like this. Right. And then of course there were the scientists and engineers, which everyone thinks of when they think of NASA. But not only that, there are really specialized scientists and engineers. And I know I didn't know that. My background being in communications, I didn't realize there was thermal engineering and mechanical engineering, structural engineering, and then systems engineering. So that person or the team that made sure that that all of the systems as they interconnect would work. So that's another role that I had no idea existed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really cool. And so then in addition, and software engineers, sorry, I'm reading some notes that I made to try to remember all of the different people. So software engineers, and then there were safety engineers. So there were people at every test and every time something was fabricated or built, someone was there to check to make sure that it met NASA safety standards. And they would estimate, based on the safety standards being met, what the level of mission assurance would be, which is a term for like the percentage of success. So did we have a 75% chance of success, an 85% chance of success? So there's a whole range of engineering related roles, and then scientists. So, the project scientist, who's the lead, he's the one who kind of came up with the idea and wants to answer, came up with the idea for the question that he wanted to answer with this mission. So is our ozone layer recovering from the depletion it experienced in the 70s, 80s, and 90s? And, his answer, or his guess, was that yes, it probably is, but let's put this instrument up there and figure it out. So, it started with that question from a scientist and then he went to the engineers and they worked together to develop this instrument that was built. And it was just really interesting. And then people who worked with our international partners, in addition to, the legal team and the resource team, there was a person whose role it was just to be the interface between NASA Langley and the company in Europe that built part of our payload, and between NASA Langley and the space station office, and then NASA Langley and SpaceX, because that's who launched us. We were on a SpaceX rocket. So it takes more than just science and engineering, and I think people just don't realize that. And then even within engineering, there were technicians. So people whose jobs it was to come in every day and work 9 to 5 or 8 to whatever they were working on. And as the project went on, there were some crunch times with schedule where we worked, not me personally, because I wasn't doing anything hands-on, but people would work shift work, so 2 10-hour shifts a day, or weekends or holidays, to make sure that we were able to deliver on time and within the cost and schedule. And those technicians, a lot of those technicians, they would build the wires and the cables that routed, through the instrument, and And so the range of education in these careers was really wide. There were people who graduated high school and went into the NASA Pathways program. And so they went right from high school to being kind of an apprentice, to learning the skills on the job, and then eventually becoming civil servants. And then there were people who had college degrees, bachelor's degrees, and they had various roles on the project as well. And then there were people that had master's degrees, and on the science side, that's where you saw most of the PhDs. So there's just a huge range. The team was really diverse, and it really required just a range of skills, not just technical skills and not just formal education, but leadership skills, being able to work as a team and communicate with each other in an effective way. And people really were passionate about what they were doing, and that says a lot to the manager, right? Because he was able to get across to everyone that was working on their tiny little piece, the people making a cable, the person standing in the back of the room as the safety manager for a test, at midnight on a Saturday. They all understood that science data that we wanted to get was so important that they had to do a good job, and they wanted to do a good job. And so it was really, really exciting to, they made me feel like part of the team, even though I wasn't in the clean room working on the instrument. And it was just a really, really great experience. And to see that diversity, to see, the people that they always knew they wanted to work at NASA. And so they, took math and science and engineering classes, and they went to college and they got a degree and they got an internship. But then people who didn't know what they wanted to do, and maybe didn't go to college right away and bounced around for a while and then decided, that I didn't realize that was something I could do when they went back to school. So I got to meet and work with all these people and really just learn that there is a true range in the education backgrounds and backgrounds in general of all the people that were on the project. Right. So there's a question about the data, and Tracy. So the data from there, it's a long story, so I'm not going to go into it, but there's previous SAGE missions, and so there is ozone data that's available to the public, just not from this particular one that's on space station yet. And so I'll put a link in the chat when I finish up. And it launched from Cape Canaveral in February, and it was really awesome. And part of it is the people, so that they just made it fun and they made it exciting, and part of it is being at NASA is just it's exciting. So does that kind of cover what you wanted me to talk about? I don't want to take up too much time.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. I think we probably should move forward, and then if we have some time for more questions, I don't know if you have to get off right away. What I wanted to,
I'll stay on, so there's
a little bit. So what I wanted to say then is what you've just all experienced is what a career speaker could be in a classroom. Now is kind of talk about this kind of experience and how it might fit into a continuum of experiences that you could present to your students over time. Does that work? So if this were a regular career speaker situation, we would actually have the students hopefully will have been prepared to ask questions of Kristen, and then there might be a lively discussion, and that might go on for another 10 minutes or half an hour. So unfortunately, we don't have time to play out what a whole career speaker event would look like, but this is, you've gotten the best part of it. And I'm gonna now switch to the next slide, and we'll talk about how this fits into this larger continuum of experiences. So this is what we call a career development continuum that myself and a group of colleagues here in California developed. And this is not rocket science. This is not anything different probably from what you've seen, except that it lays out experiences over time. And what we've just experienced right now is what we would call a career speaker, which is in the career awareness domain. So career awareness is when when teachers and adults are simply trying to provide students with exposure to any number of options. And as you heard Kristen speak, she was talking about the whole variety of opportunities that are available at NASA. And that's ideally what a career speaker would do when they would come into your classroom. It might also be a tour at NASA or Goddard, or in a local business, or in a community-based organization. At the career exploration phase, it's a lot about career awareness as well, but it's the stage where students begin to actually take some initiative and show some agency. So maybe they've heard from the speaker like Kristen that there's opportunities in system engineering, but they actually don't understand what that means, but it was intriguing for them. So then they might do an informational interview, and they might spend 15 minutes, they might get get some contact information for Kristen, and they might follow up and spend some time actually probing more deeply into what that looks like. At the career preparation, so they're still learning about work at that time. When you shift over to career preparation, this is the domain where we are talking about things like internships, or robust projects with industry, or scientist involvement in the project. And this is where the students are not just learning about potential careers, but they're actually doing something, which is the actual work. And Globe is a perfect example of that. That's exactly what we're going to talk about in just a moment. And of course, career training is the next level, when students already have an idea of what they would like to do, and they specialize more deeply in a particular occupation. So this is just to sort of set the framework for the kinds of experiences over time. The reason that the Continuum has sort of become useful for people in the career development side of our work is that it helps not only teachers think about how they can successively engage students in deeper levels of learning, but also how they can engage community members and industry representatives in successively deeper, right? So you have a lot of people in the community who may not be ready to take a student intern, but they may be perfectly willing to come in at the career awareness stage and come in and do a talk, or open their offices for, or their lab for students to come explore. So, and then they build trust with you, and they provide more in-depth opportunities over time. Okay, so one of the key innovations, and Jessica and I talked about this when we were preparing this presentation, is the other big idea is that we're talking about experiences that each of which have outcomes. So the idea isn't just to have Kristen come into your classroom, but really to prepare the students and have them think about what they could be learning from an exchange with Kristen. And of course, it's not scientific outcomes we're talking about. We're talking about outcomes that relate to the students actually understanding what the range of opportunities are, and what the educational requirements are, so that they can actually start to think about their futures a little bit. And again, we don't want them to miss out on the present, but this goes all the way down to elementary school. There's a lot of interest in California and throughout the country about really starting to expose students to options. And of course, we know Mr. Rogers did that for preschool age students. It's really what we want to build is in even the youngest children is a sense of opportunity and possibility in their lives. So just a couple of outcome slides. I'm going to do this very quickly. So these are some of the things that you may want to have your students think about before they have a career awareness experience. That you would want them to be able to provide some examples, at least one, of a career field. What are some accepted workplace norms? Kristen talked about teamwork, for example, which was really, we talk about 21st century skills, but kids, it's really an abstract idea. And to have an adult or a young person, who may have just graduated, come in and talk about the workplace norms that really are expected and what those look like in a particular workplace is really important. And also then to have the students reflect on whether they have those skills. Do they know how to work in a group? Do they know how to communicate? That you want students to be able to articulate the kind of post-secondary education that may be required. And again, that's not to pummel them with thinking about the future all the time, but just to help them realize that if they want to meet their goals, they need to study, or they need to have certain kinds of experiences, or they need to enjoy doing, something or another. many communities do, in fact, and high functioning school districts, the kids hear about future college opportunities at a very young age. And then the last one is about how core skills are used, like math and reading. And again, this is often for students who don't get a lot of messaging at home about the importance of math and English, for example, or basic science skills. When the students can connect that to something that they're excited about, that may be a future job. It may be, we had a speaker, and you'll see a photo of him later on, a young graduate student from UC Berkeley, who told us about his data collection in atmospheric sciences, and he gets to fly in a plane. But he didn't get to fly in a plane just because he wanted to fly in a plane. He also had to become a graduate student, which meant that he had to learn math and science and so forth. So connecting opportunities with core skills is really important for students who are not always motivated in school, and even those who are. So I'm going to skip a couple of the slides. These are some of the kind of 21st century skills that can be supported through career awareness activities, like critical thinking and understanding how technology works in the workplace. And so career preparation, I won't go into this in any depth, but that was at the higher end of the continuum, if you remember. And I wanted to reinforce that that's not an idea that's exclusive to older students. If you're having an in-depth experience and you're actually engaging with adults who are working in the same field, like scientists, like our young students in Globe can be engaging with scientists. They are, and it's connected to the curriculum, and there's value beyond school. That's how we define kind of a career preparation experience. It doesn't have to be an internship in a job placement site. It can have these qualities and still be a very rich career preparation experience. So that's what Globe does. And I don't know. Okay. So it's a form of career preparation. Kids collect real data. I mean, that's what's so beautiful, right? They're not just doing a project for the sake of getting a grade. They actually report data to real scientists. And this is one of our grad students from UC Berkeley, who's now working at Langley with Jessica, Jill Tagey. And she was an incredible asset to our project when we were first funded a few years ago. There's a connection to the curriculum. So they're doing math and science in the classroom. And they're contributing to science. They're not just getting a grade. And so I mentioned that this is appropriate for all grades and age groups, but we know particularly adolescents, they're in the business of becoming adults, and they need to know that they're having an impact on the world. That's part of their developmental trajectory. So as much as we want kids to be motivated by grades, they're really motivated by their ability to impact the world. So these are some ways that you can enhance the value of the career value of Globe. So I'm going to go through these relatively quickly, and if we have time, we can discuss them more. So some of these are pretty obvious. You can bring scientists and other professionals into your classroom to discuss their research. You can have students do their own research on how their data are used by professionals to solve real problems. We actually embedded some of this as a requirement for when students did their Globe projects. They would have to do some research on how the skills that they were learning in their Globe project actually could be transferred to other disciplines. So a small, okay, so what I'm gonna do now, this is where we queued up a video for you to see. As an example, one of the graduate students who works with the young man who you saw on the previous slide, Ben Nault, actually came in a couple of years ago and spoke with a group of our students, and we wanted to show you a snippet of a video that we took of her speaking to a group of students. So this is part of what we've done in our project, is to have graduate students from UC Berkeley come in and talk to the students about how they became graduate students and scientists. We've organized it. So this is the first bullet, is just about how we organized this, but we did it in partnership with the university, and we were actually put in touch with this project by NSF, specifically because NSF was also funding them. And NSF funded projects need to have a public outreach component. So it turned out to be a win-win for all of us. For the grad students, they got experience presenting. The project, the atmospheric science project got points for doing public outreach, and we got access to a fabulous cadre of enthusiastic and knowledgeable graduate students. So I'm going to have my colleague Tracy. Tracy, can you show that on your screen, or is that?
Yeah, just stop sharing, and then I will start.
I'm going to have to start sharing again. Okay.
Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
All right, so this is one of the graduate students from UC Berkeley at a high school in Benicia.
Right.
But you know what? I don't know if this is going to work.
Oh, really? We can't get the sound up?
It's as good as it gets.
Maybe turn your mic off.
Do I have to turn my mic off?
I wouldn't have thought it mattered there.
Shoot. Well, there's Jill. Are there volume controls in? In the program, are there volume controls?
Yeah, I think they mean that I could do something.
Just wondering if we should go back to me sharing and seeing if I can pull it up. It should be the same though, right? Tracy? Well, we can make this video available.
Tracy?
She talked for she and the other graduate student talked for about the full class period. So we just had extracted this one little piece where Alexis is talking about her, how she became a scientist and how it was in fact an internship that really catalyzed her decision to go on to graduate school and do this work. What's lovely about it is that she talks about how she actually didn't know what she was going to do, and she was really interested in theater as well, and how she actually appreciated then being able to do these kinds of presentations, because she was able to then bring her theater skills to bear in doing this work in addition to her science skills. So what we'll do, I think it would be best if we went back to the PowerPoint, and then we can see if we can get it to work. There's plenty to talk about. In fact, I wanted Tracy to also talk about this. So Tracy Ostrom, who's now my partner, hand in glove partner in our project, we recruited her from the Globe classroom. She was our star teacher when we were doing this work previously. And she was one of the people who she knew had met Jill and brought the graduate students into her classroom and worked with them. So should we go back to the presentation for right now, Tracy?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know I need to share my screen again. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of I don't want to repeat what's been already said as far as
scroll here. Tracy, why don't you talk a little bit then about your experience in bringing the graduate students in and using them in the classroom?
Sure.
I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
I can hear you.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Maybe I'm muted.
Maybe you can't hear. But yeah, Tracy,
I
you
can't
can
hear anything. There.
So you guys can hear me okay?
No, I can't. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Yeah, so I was very fortunate of looking at careers with throughout my work with Globe and making the connection with students. I just wanted to emphasize something that was alluded to earlier about matching students' interests in having them match their interests with pursuing career awareness and career exploration. And I think sometimes students know what they're not interested in more than they know what they are interested in. And one of the values of having people like Jill come into the classroom is listening to their stories. And in all honesty, when Kristen started her story I was captivated with her being a journalist, you know, her story and how she got to where she is. And I think we all have those stories to some extent. And those are the things that kids listen to, you know, and listening to, I can remember Jill's story when she was talking about the fact that she had to solder and, you know, figure out this, you know, motherboard and blah, 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 all this stuff that she, you know, they just don't teach you that in everyday, you know, college experiences. So she had to learn how to do all that stuff. She had to learn to know, you know, what made things work. And I think her telling that story to the students was a bit of an inspiration that they took away thinking, okay, well, I may not know what career I'm going to do, but I know what I'm interested in doing. I know what skills and what interests me as a person. And I think, you know, that's a valuable asset to bring to your students from elementary school to throughout, you know, high school and above, because I don't think they really think about that more so than they, you know, oh, I want to be a doctor. Well, you know, what is it that interests you? Why do you want to be a doctor, kind of stuff. So I think engaging conversations in the classroom at a very early age and that storytelling piece, I think is super important. So I thank you, Jill, for enlightening my students. I don't know if I ever told you that, but they really did enjoy your story and what you brought to the classroom. You're muted, Svetlana.
Okay. Doesn't say that I'm muted. Can you hear me now at all?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. One of the things that Jill helped us with, and this is something that everyone may want to take into consideration, is that she actually provided some input on how to best utilize the graduate students as resources to the classroom. So she herself had a lot of insights, and and Jill, if you're on the line, you're more than welcome to chime in on this. I hadn't prepped you for that, but do you want to say a couple of words, if you're on, about what your experience was like working with us? Just say good things. Or maybe just...
Absolutely. There's nothing but good things to say. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So I was working as a graduate student in chemistry at Berkeley when I met Svetlana and Tracy, and they started working with the Globe program. And a lot of times in graduate school, you know, the science is what brings you to grad school, and you're really excited about the science, but it can get kind of very narrow focused and very tunnel visioned. And so when you get to go out and talk to other people, talk to students, and they ask you questions about what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why would you volunteer to go to 22nd grade? Why? It's really good, actually, as graduate students get to practice presenting, and that's fantastic, and it's something to put on your resume, and that's great too. But it's also really helpful because you get to open up your thought process and say, well, why are we doing this? How do you explain what your project is in a way that a high school student can understand and be interested in? And it's really inspiring for us, for them too, as a graduate student, to go out and talk to people who are just really interested in what you're doing and ask questions that you would never have thought of because you've been tunneled into this project that you've been working on for 5 years and you've only been looking at that. And sometimes you can get questions that make you actually think on a whole new direction, which is really fantastic. And I found when we were opening the project up to try and find more graduate students, people would jump on the opportunity. People were really interested, and we got, at one point we had people from the math department going out and giving presentations, and lots of people. And you can talk about pretty much any research in a way. If you're excited about it, then kids will be excited about it too. And it gives them an opportunity to see, like, hey, they're not just nerds. They're not just, strange people who are sitting at a desk all day turning out equations. It's not just like in the Big Bang Theory, although sometimes it can get close. Graduate students and scientists are people, and they're interesting people. It was a lot of fun to work with you. You're on mute, Svetlana, sorry.
Myself, so am I muted now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. It must be Janet pulling strings behind the scenes or something. Well, thank you so much for those insights, Jill. We're thrilled that you're on this call, actually.
Of course.
And available. Okay. So I'm going to just go through a couple more slides, and then I'm going to cede to Jessica's going to talk a little bit about some NASA resources as well. So another strategy, which I think is really important, is to make sure that students have the opportunity to reflect on their projects in terms of what they learned about themselves in doing the work, what they liked and didn't like. Did they like collaborating? Did they like communicating? Or did they like just having their head down and working on the science? So that's really important for students. They don't get the opportunities to do that. And I had a private practice in career development. It is astounding how many adults do not know what their own skills are, or even their own interests or passions. They have to be taken through a system. So it's actually a muscle. It's a skill that you can impart to your students early on when they can start being reflective, because that's one of the things that they're going to need to do throughout their entire lives. Okay, and we talked a little bit, I don't know this, okay, accessing resources. So Jessica asked me to cover a couple of slides about how you get speakers or how you get experiences for your students. There are a lot of counselors and career centers in schools that will have opportunities. We have a resource called Green 360, which is listed. There's a link to it at the end of the presentation, which you'll see, which is an online career assessment tool that Wested developed and that Tracy's working on right now. So external, there are lots of career initiatives going on in schools all over the world, all over the country, all over the world too, but all over the country. And you may be, as a science teacher, kind of not involved with that, but I can guarantee that there's something going on. There's a career center, there's your Rotary Club, And you can also just strike out on your own and talk to employers. You may be able to start with checking with your parents, your local chamber of commerce, or some of the kids who graduated from your school earlier. Oftentimes parents are the best source, and they love to come in to talk for 15 minutes, half an hour to the kids in their own kids' classrooms. And it's a really nice experience. Another thing, a plug for what we call teacher externships or teacher job shadows. I don't know how many of you have done this, but it's a really important strategy if you're interested in delving into this more deeply, for the teachers themselves to interview employers and spend time in the work site. I mean, most of you are working scientists, so you know what the work looks like, but a lot of teachers who have not been in the workplace for a long time have lost track of how technology has changed the workplace, really the level of communication and collaboration that's now required. It's a really, really eye-opening, inspiring opportunity if you can get your teachers to go out themselves, and then they bring their excitement back into the classroom. And that's actually a really low-cost way to do it. It's not as fun for the kids as having speakers come in, but it's really important for the curriculum. So here's some additional resources. I'm not going to go through these. I mentioned Green 360. Junior Achievement, you've all heard of Junior Achievement, I'm sure. They have some amazing materials for job shadowing. And job shadowing is when a student goes into a workplace and spends some time, anywhere from 3 hours to a day, and sometimes even more, sort of literally shadowing an employee. And hopefully they have other experiences. They talk to the HR people and they walk around. You guys all know what that is. I'm sure it's become quite a popular strategy. But just wanted you to know that Jay has some great resources for preparing kids, and then also then for the reflection work and also all the logistics that go with that. And then one of our favorite programs is Y-Plan. We can talk with you more about that. If you were on the last webinar, Megan Johnson was speaking about using Y-Plan in her Globe work. And Y-Plan is a methodology for getting kids out into the community and engaging with community planning initiatives. These are our websites. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jessica to talk about some career resources at NASA.
Thanks so much, Svetlana. I'll go ahead and let you continue to drive your PowerPoint slides there. So while I get started with this, I was wondering if folks could type into the chat if you have used any NASA resources, specifically trying to highlight careers, if you would put them in there. And so what I've done, when Svetlana and I first started talking about this, what I was so excited to hear from her was some more structure and rigor beyond having a speaker come in. So the idea of having a speaker come in so students learn what. That I thought was really powerful, is thinking through the specifics of what do you want the students to learn. And some of the things that Svetlana and I even talked about is a story I shared with Svetlana was I got to be in a NASA leadership program a couple years ago. And part of that leadership program is we had a lot of high-level leaders at NASA come and be guest speakers to the group. And one evening, our coaches made us all come up with questions to ask a future guest speaker because we weren't doing a very good job of asking questions. And that's a skill, right? So just like we think about all of those science inquiry skills with students, right? Thinking about observing and posing questions about nature, analyzing data, some of these skills of having someone come into the classroom or reviewing resources on careers, there are specific skills associated with that. And so you can imagine, like Svetlana said, that if adults don't know what their career skills are, their personal skills are, and if we didn't have a good handle on how to ask some good, relevant questions, you can imagine that these might be things that kids need some practice doing. So I appreciated her first comments about, prepping your students if you're going to have a guest speaker come in and have them start going around the room thinking about, well, what questions might you ask? So on this slide here, these slides, again, we'll post it with the YouTube link, but there are internships from NASA These are paid internships, right? So that should get all your students excited that they could get paid to have an internship at NASA. Many of them are for college students, but there are some opportunities for high school students. And they definitely start enrollment early. So you want to think at least 6 months in advance for the internships. And reminding students that internships are a great way not just to learn about what they like, but Svetlana was talking about learning about what they don't like, right? And all of those internships will be an experience for sure, right? They're going to be in a different environment, work environment, teaming environment than they've ever been in before, and they'll learn something from that. So there are some other programs that I think are pretty exciting websites. There's women.nasa.gov that specifically highlights women within the NASA program. There's some really good posters for women in NASA. And there's a new lithograph specifically on women of color. For those of you who work with Hispanic students and Hispanic families, I really like this poster that's there about Tu futuro y el nuestro. That poster is pretty fun because it has various people from NASA, and it has where they were in their career path across a spectrum. So when they were in elementary school, what were they thinking about? In middle school, what were they thinking about? In high school? Really like that poster. And it is available in English as well. If you could switch to the next one, Svetlana. We also do have a number of resources where you can sort of meet a scientist or an engineer or a technician or a financial analyst or a communications lead like Kristen. There are a number of those features at what's called the NASA People website, and that's nasa.gov/about/people. And there are feature articles about lots of different people that work at NASA. And so that might be one way you can start to introduce the various careers with your students. Now, and something else that Globe is trying to do through the Globe Observer program, that citizen science app that many of you have, is that they're starting to feature scientists and how those scientists use their data. So you can see a couple of the profiles there that are featured right on there. And if you could skip to the next one. And then I wanted to showcase some of the videos, right? So we're talking about, so these resources were kind of grouped together, right? Some more static pages, something that has featured articles, and here are some videos. The top picture there is of a colleague of ours at NASA Langley, Yolanda Shea. She's an atmospheric scientist, and she has a really lovely video. It's about 8 minutes long, I think, about her background as a scientist and how she got into the field. That one's a really great one. And then there's another video that some of our colleagues within some of the NASA award programs, the National Institute for Aerospace creates these videos called E-clips. They're really well done, and they often feature some science content. But in this video that's called Engineering Design to Support Scientific Discovery, what I found that video to really be about is that relationship between science and engineering. And so that's something I think that's very important within Globe, right? We talk about the science, but we're using technology. We're using a tool that had to be engineered, right? It had to be designed, it had to be built, and it had to be built for a scientific purpose. And I say that all really to talk about how STEM is integrated, right? And for a NASA mission to happen, these people all need to talk to one another, right? So someone might be building the instrument, but there's a scientist on the other end who's giving them requirements in terms of what will it need to be able to do, right? Well, I just can't put an instrument in space. I need it to be able to do something. I need it to be able to record ozone with an accuracy of something. And so there's really this back and forth relationship amongst a team that happens that really is that integration of STEM. So I wanted to highlight those few resources. I had put in the chat, and I see several of you are commenting about some of the different resources. in the chat, if you go back up, there were 2 other websites that I linked in there. One was about Speakers Bureau, so how you can request a speaker to come to your school, and that's in the chat. And then another one in the chat was the Digital Learning Network. And that is specifically for a digital platform, so it'll be virtual connections. And so those are both in the chat windows. Diana, is it the NASA Langley that has a badge program? So the badge program is actually run by the NASA Office of Education. Yolanda Shea's video here is one of the things you do in order to get the badge. So let me Google the address for the URL to get the badges, but it's basically an online, go at your own pace system for professional development and training in a NASA content area. One of the content areas is about clouds and Earth's energy budget. That's a badge that you can get, and there's a teacher badge, and there's also a student badge for that. There are also other content areas beyond my scope of expertise, like Journey to Mars, for example. So those are really fun to be able to do, and several of them do have some career components. So let me find that URL and I'll add that in there. What we would love to hear from folks, and you don't have to do that now, but is to think about, are there career resources from NASA that would be helpful to you in your Globe classroom? What NASA career thing, I'm trying to be as vague as possible because I want you guys to tell us what is already useful to you, or if there's something new that we could develop that would be helpful to you. So if it's videos, how long should it be? What sort of content do you want? Do you like the idea of features where they go to a website and just kind of poke around at a few different people? What could that look like? I'd love for you guys to think about that and continue to let us know, because that's something that we would love to be able to develop for the Globe teachers and for teachers everywhere, really, to be able to have better tools and resources about the careers available at NASA. Yeah, I'll find that URL. So thank you guys very much. And Svetlana, you'll have to unmute.
Why does that happen? Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. So we're at the end, and Jessica, that was fabulous. I just wanted to say that this video is wonderful. I highly recommend. It was hard to get this done because I kept getting sidetracked and actually watching these videos. So do take a look at them. And I'm really excited about the opportunities of building this work, because I think there's so many kids that really can gain tremendous value from this piece of the work. And I know that NSF and as well as NASA are really interested in building the STEM pipeline and building STEM identity in young people. Many of you who were in the boot camp heard a lot about diversity issues, inclusion, and so forth. I think this is a huge issue for us, and we have a lot of resources to make it work for our students. So anyway, terrific. So the last 2 slides are just thank you slides. And then the very last one, so there's contact information for Janet and Kevin. And the last one is just a welcome to the next webinar, which will be on May 10th, and that's on the solar eclipse. There's lots going on, as you all know, on the solar eclipse. So we're a little after 6. I'm happy to stay on, or I'm sure Jessica and Tracy can stay on for a moment if anybody has any further questions. But are there any questions for the good of the order before we end? I'm not seeing the chat box though, so you'll have to, if there's, we good? Time to go? Okay. Well, then we'll call it an evening. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Svetlana.
Okay.